Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into something super fascinating and honestly incredibly relevant right now. We're pulling straight from our source material on internet culture to unpack a huge issue. Why does society so often strip content creators of their basic humanity? I mean, really think about it. We're going to dive deep into the psychological and social dynamics at play here and explain exactly why society treats influencers like emotionless robots instead of real breathing people. Our source material tackles this exact question by looking at a highly public, super emotional fallout involving a well-known YouTuber, Abid. The whole analysis centers on him recently venting online, but here's the catch. This venting happened a full 4 years after a devastating betrayal by his peers. The source uses this specific case study to ask a really profound question. Why do we, as an audience, expect internet creators to just act like emotionless robots? Like they should just seamlessly absorb pain without ever showing a crack in their armor? Well, to understand this broader societal issue, we first need to look at what set this all off.
Section 1. The Catalyst. A delayed reaction to betrayal. So the source maps out the timeline leading up to his recent outburst. Step 1 was the initial betrayal. Abid was basically convinced by his friends to take out a financial loan and rent an apartment specifically so they could form a YouTube content group. But instead of this awesome collaborative dream, they completely abandoned him. Then comes step 2, 4 years of absolute silence. He just swallowed the pain, tried to move on, and lived with it. And finally, step 3, the massive public emotional outburst that just recently happened. The analysis makes a really crucial point here. Problems don't just magically die with time. They ferment.
Now, the source neutrally reports that the public reaction to this was totally split. On one side, you've got people dismissing the whole outburst as just a desperate plea for attention. Their argument is basically, hey, it's been 4 years, bringing it up now is just unnecessary drama. But the other side, they view this as a genuine breaking point. They understand that when you bottle up emotions for that long, they eventually reach a threshold where you just have to vent, regardless of how much time has passed.
To really validate this delayed reaction, the source brings up a brilliant analogy. It says, like a childhood bullying incident, the psychological impact doesn't always show immediately. It stays inside and eats at you. It makes so much sense, right? We don't judge the timeline of someone's childhood trauma, so why on earth do we judge the timeline of adult betrayal? The psychological impact of betrayal isn't bound by some strict, convenient schedule. And this brings the source to its central critique, which is absolutely the heart of our explainer today.
Section 2. The emotionless robot myth. Fame versus humanity.
The speaker completely challenges our implicit bias here. Must influencers endure all abuse silently? Society has developed this incredibly twisted logic. Because we pay for creators with our views, our clicks, and our attention, we somehow develop this false sense of ownership over them. The screen creates a literal barrier to our empathy. We start believing that the second someone puts themselves on the internet, they forfeit their right to basic human boundaries. We expect them to silently tolerate insults, toxic behavior, and even profound personal betrayal just because they happen to be famous.
It's literally an impossible double standard. On one hand, societal expectations demand that creators act like completely balanced, unfeeling corporate entities. Kind of like cold, professional bank tellers who just process transactions and never, ever complain. But the human reality? It's entirely different. Creators are human beings. They need empathy, they feel the sting of betrayal deeply, and yes, they have emotional limits. The source passionately argues that fame does not erase your humanity.
Okay, so how does this trauma actually manifest? The source observes that during his recent vent, the creator repeatedly used dismissive words like mchos, which translates to a highly dismissive whatever. Now, the analysis identifies this not as genuine apathy, but as a classic defense mechanism, an unconscious psychological strategy. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a psychological shield. The sheer repetition of the word shows he hasn't moved on at all. He's just using it to mask deep psychological pain. So why did this betrayal even happen in the first place?
Section 3. Capitalism versus true friendship in content houses.
The source analyzes the root cause of this specific betrayal by laying out the harsh realities of YouTube groups. These are fundamentally capitalist environments. They're built on transactional relationships and mutually beneficial business deals. The major mistake, according to the source, was entering this hyper-profit-driven ecosystem and expecting genuine loyalty and brotherhood. It's a massive clash between authentic human connection and the incredibly transactional nature of internet culture.
The source highlights the absolute tragedy of the situation by quoting the creator's initial motivation. "I swear I'm entering this group specifically for you." Think about that. He didn't take out loans and sign leases calculating his return on investment. No way. He joined because a specific person begged him to, out of friendship. He walked into a capitalist machine with a purely emotional, human motive.
This leads right into a core ethical question raised by the source. If the rest of the group knew they were going to leave him out, why did they let him take on massive personal and financial risks? It comes down to this really heavy truth. We can endure rejection, but we cannot endure betrayal. Rejection is a clear, honest no. Betrayal, though, that's a broken promise that completely shatters your sense of reality. But why didn't his friends warn him? Let's get into it.
Section 4. The Consultation Center Trap. Because this creator acted as the group's older brother, literally their consultation center for marriage issues, depression, work problems, the whole shebang, people made some incredibly dangerous assumptions. As the source breaks down, 35% of the time people assume the solid friend just doesn't need help. Another 35% assume they can effortlessly absorb everyone else's problems. And the rest? They just assume the strong friend will never break. Because he was so endlessly reliable, everyone just assumed he was an unbreakable pillar.
The tragic irony of that dynamic is this: projecting a solid exterior actually causes others to totally neglect your boundaries and absolve themselves of honesty. When you act like you can handle absolutely anything, people ironically treat you with incredible fragility. They use your presumed toughness as a super convenient excuse to avoid difficult, honest conversations with you, assuming you'll just figure it out on your own.
Section 5. The Limits of Medical Treatment for Betrayal.
When the creator finally spoke out, some critics were quick to suggest he should have just sought therapy or taken medication instead of venting online. But when people suggest he should just take a pill, they completely misunderstand the boundaries of psychiatric medicine. Yes, any psychiatrist will tell you medication does vital things. It regulates mood, it helps you sleep, it lowers baseline anxiety. But there is a very hard limit on what it cannot do. It absolutely cannot explain why a friend betrayed you. It cannot instantly heal root trauma, and it for sure cannot provide moral closure. Pills do not stop the narrative looping in your head. They don't answer the crushing question of why.
Section 6. The Lingering Impact of Broken Trust.
Concluding this deep dive, the source shifts from the analytical side back to a deeply personal one. The speaker offers a really poignant piece of advice to the betrayed creator: change the apartment. The source beautifully articulates that it's not about the physical walls. It's about what those walls symbolize. Every single time he walks into that space, he is living inside the physical manifestation of a broken promise. True healing requires packing up and abandoning those physical symbols.
Ultimately, this explainer of our source material leaves us with a powerful cinematic reminder. I know it was you, broke my heart. The source forces us to remember that behind the screens, behind the algorithms, and behind the shiny content houses, these creators are real humans enduring very real heartbreak. They are not emotionless robots built for our entertainment. So the next time you watch a creator go through a public struggle, ask yourself, are you viewing them as a human being or just another piece of content to consume? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today.